Once upon a time, there was a 2-year-old girl who thought her life was over before it had even begun. That little girl was me. When I turned 20, my father's shame of being poor turned me into something to be traded. He didn't see me as his daughter anymore. He saw me as a ticket out of humiliation. And so, one summer evening, I was sold. Yes, sold. To a man nearly twice my age. A wealthy stranger. Someone the whole town whispered about. Someone they called peculiar. They said I was lucky. Lucky to have been chosen. Lucky that a man with land, money, and reputation wanted me. But in truth, luck had nothing to do with it. I was merchandise, dressed up in lace in silence. I remember the morning of my wedding like it was yesterday. The sky was gray, heavy with the kind of clouds that promise rain but never deliver. Mama stood behind me, pinning the last piece of lace to my dress. Her hands trembled the whole time. "You look beautiful," she whispered. I looked at her reflection in the mirror and said, "Then why does it feel like a funeral?" When I walked down that aisle, my feet felt like they were sinking into the earth. The church bells rang, not for joy, but for resignation. My father stood tall, proud even, like he had done something noble. Mama tried not to cry. And there at the end of the aisle stood Arthur, the man who would become my husband. He didn't smile, he just bowed his head slightly, as if he too were being buried under the weight of something heavy and invisible. That night, I prepared myself for the worst. I sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the wall, my hands clenched in my lap. But instead of cruelty, I found something else. Something I couldn't understand then. Arthur sat beside me, and in a quiet, trembling voice, he said, "Tilly, I can't be the kind of husband you expect." He told me about his condition, about the secret he had carried for decades, a secret that had kept him from marrying until my father offered him this arrangement. And in that moment, something inside me broke, not from fear, but from the realization that he was just as trapped as I was. We were two prisoners sharing the same cell. In the weeks that followed, we lived like strangers. He would work in the fields, I would cook, clean, and write letters I never sent. At night, we would sit in silence, listening to the crickets. There were no harsh words, but no warmth either. Just a quiet politeness between two people who had been forced into each other's lives. Then, one night, he came home with a fever. I stayed by his side, changing wet towels, whispering prayers under my breath. At one point, his eyes fluttered open, and he said softly, "You called me Arthur." He smiled faintly, and for the first time, I saw not a stranger, but a man. That night, something changed. After that, we started to talk, slowly, cautiously. He taught me how to mend fences, how to tell when rain was coming by watching the leaves, and I taught him how to laugh again. The silence between us started to feel like peace instead of punishment. When he couldn't give me children, he cried. I'd never seen a man cry before. I told him we could still build a family, just differently. And that's how we came to adopt. Our first child was a little boy with big brown eyes and a habit of holding my finger when he slept. After that came 2 more. And suddenly our quiet house was full of noise and life. Those children gave us what the world had denied us: purpose, laughter, a reason to hope. Arthur built a swing in the yard, and every Sunday he'd push them until the air was full of squeals and sunshine. People in town stopped whispering. They started nodding respectfully when they passed us. It was as if love, real love, had erased the shame that once defined us. The years rolled by, quietly but surely. I learned that happiness isn't loud. It's not the grand gestures. It's the soft, steady warmth that stays even when the storms come. Then, last Sunday, something beautiful happened. My daughter Ella asked me at the dinner table, "Mama, tell the younger grandkids how your marriage was." So I did, one more time. The kids leaned in, their eyes wide and shining as I began, Once upon a time, there was a young girl who thought her life was over when she found out she was going to marry a stranger. And as I told them about fear, duty, and unexpected love, my youngest granddaughter, who's just 6, asked, "Grandma, did you live happily ever after?" I smiled. I said, "We lived happily, in our own way, and that's the only way that matters. Because there is no perfect formula for happiness, no single model for love, no standard size for fulfillment. There is respect, there is partnership, and there is the courage to accept what is different. If I could go back in time, I wouldn't change the marriage or the man or even the pain. I would only change the shame, the unnecessary suffering caused by fear of other people's judgment. I would start earlier to accept that our happiness was different, but it was real. Now, at 77 years old, I sit on the porch of the farm we built together. The land stretches out like a memory, golden and kind. I'm a widow now for 10 years, but never alone. Every night before I sleep, I whisper, "Thank you, Arthur. Thank you for teaching me that what matters isn't what you have, but what you are. That true love doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be chosen every single day." When I was 20, I had no choices. My father chose, Arthur chose. But that night, our wedding night, when he told me his truth, I made my first real choice. I chose to stay. Arthur chose honesty, and together, we chose to build a life that made sense to no one else, but meant everything to us. Now, when I watch my grandkids running across the same fields we once plowed, I realize something simple but profound. People spend their lives searching for the flame of love, the passion, the spark, the fire. But they forget that a blazing fire burns out quickly. What keeps a home warm through the long winters isn't the flame. It's the steady, gentle warmth of understanding and acceptance. Our marriage began as a transaction, but it ended as a testament that true love isn't about finding the perfect person, but about learning to love an imperfect person completely. My story is just one of millions of stories that deserve to be told. Stories of women and men who were silenced by shame, who endured more than they should have, but who found hope, kindness, and freedom in unexpected places. If my journey, from a souled bride to a free woman, has touched your heart, please stay with us here on Grandparents Distress, because every week we share stories that remind us that life, no matter how crooked its lines, always finds a way to write something right. So, wherever you're listening from, America or any corner of this world, remember this: you are not what others decided you should be. You are what you choose to become. And sometimes God really does write straight with the crooked lines of our lives.